Okay, we are back. So Kirsten, thank you. All right, we're going to turn now to our workshop on creating comic books. Is our presenter here on creating your own comics? They're not here yet.
No, that's me.
Oh, oh, there you go. Um, all right, so everyone, all the other presenters, if I would ask you to mute yourself and you can turn off your camera. That way, I think that might work better for the presenters so that other folks aren't visible. Uh, all right, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Kinsey Brown, our guide in how to create one's own comic.
Hey, we're going to do our best, right? All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad everybody was able to join this afternoon. Everybody is safe and sound at home, or even if you're at the bus stop, you're watching us on your cell phone. I want you to be able to have a good time, learn something, and enjoy yourself. And if possible, be able to have some takeaways that'll help you begin to produce some of the work that you might be inspired to create from watching this event. Like Dr. Ward said, my name is Akeem Shea Brown. I'm an artist, writer, and creator. And I'm just showing you this video right now, just so you can see that I'm a real person. I'm about to share my screen, and you may not see me to the end. We don't have a lot of time this afternoon, but we're gonna try to jump right in this and have a good conversation, okay? Hopefully everybody can see that screen. Somebody say yes or yeah, or give me a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good job, good job. Okay, like I said, my name is Akeem Shea Brown. I am an artist, writer, and creator. Many of you may have seen some of my work online or on my website. I'm the writer and creator of How to Draw African Superheroes, a comic book called Umoja Force, and various comic books and coloring books that deal with African characters. And I want to talk a little bit about how to make your own comics. Now, obviously, this is going to be a general conversation. We can't go to every nook and cranny with this, but we are going to try to leave some room at the tail end of this 30 minutes so we can have some questions and answers and talk a little bit with each other and share some best practices, okay? Because I definitely love talking about storytelling and I love talking about our positive images, okay? So when we're talking about storytelling, the main thing that we need to address is that there are stages and steps into getting this thing done. All right. Yes, there are people who are able to wake up and just make comics in their sleep or out of their sleep, but I like to have a little bit of a process. So what we're going to talk about this afternoon is writing the story, writing that dreaded story, drawing the artwork, things that we love, right? Just making the pictures, adding text and graphics. Sometimes we don't think about that. And then a little bit of publishing insights, and that'll bring us to our questions and answers at the end. Okay. Now, when we talk about creating that story or thinking about that story, we really don't have to write anything down, not at all. If we have an idea in our head, that is good enough to start. But just for our conversation this afternoon, let's just pretend that we had a little thing in our head. And just for our conversation today, we're going to use just kind of like a little quick idea called Kid Jackal. As a young man, has I don't know, he looks kind of like a jackal outfit, and he has some superpowers possibly, and he's here to save the day, right? Now, if we want to make a story about Kid Jackal, we can just do something very simple. 3 basic steps. A man is robbing the bank. Kid Jackal enters to save everyone. 3, police officers take the man with the gun to jail. 1, 2, 3, beginning, middle, and end. That's all you really need. You really didn't need to write that down, and you really could start today making your comics, okay? Another form of writing and figuring out exactly what our story is going to be about is using a writing style that is a little bit more of a detailed outline. It's a step above the last outline, but it's just a little bit more detailed. As you see, there's an outline section more fleshed out. The characters are all lined out. There's also something called a tagline, which gives you a brief synopsis of what the story is about in 1 or 2 little sentences, okay? That's just another step above of how you may want to go about doing that, Okay. There's another way of creating the story, if you will, or the script. Okay. And that would be more of what you might see for a television program or a movie. It's kind of like a movie script. Okay. And what this details is what you actually see. Okay. It actually outlines the scenes, exterior busy Janema Street. I always say that wrong. Janema Street in Chad, Central West Africa. Jabir, our hero, who's AKA Kid Jackal. There's a female bank teller, and then there's some shenanigans at Aura Bank. And yeah, all you have to do is line all that out, list the characters, who says what. This is pretty much a dialogue script. Now, some people favor this, some people don't, but this is just also one choice that you could have. Right. Another choice of script would be more closely related to what comic writers may do if they were working at a bigger company. They actually detail not only the scenes and what happens from page to page, but they also detail what happens from panel to panel. Let's take a little bit of a closer look here really quick. You see exterior view of Janema Street. You see Jabbar tightly holds his books as not to drop them from the busy crowds near him. You see Jabir having dialogue. You see on page 2, suddenly a woman runs out of a nearby building. That's the panel 1 on page 2. So each page is laid out very, very tightly, so you know exactly what's going on, and the artist doesn't have any question. Okay. And these are just some basic ways that you as a writer or idea creator can make your story work or happen or flow. Okay. But what do we do once we have that script in hand? What we want to do after that is we want to create something called thumbnails. So if we have our script to the side right here, we can just easily open up our sketchbook and open up to a blank page and begin to generically break down what we want to see and what we want to happen in each panel. You know, if we say that page 1 over here has 5 panels, we can kind of break that down into how we want this to look. It could be like that, or it could be more dynamic. It's totally up to you how you want to do that and how you want to break that page up. But what I do like to do is take this script and look at it and say which part needs to stick out more, which part needs to be bigger, which part needs to be smaller. But those are the things that you definitely want to take in consideration when you write your script and once you have your script in hand. Okay. Now, I know we're moving kind of fast and we'll probably get to some questions after this, but I just kind of want to get to all of these parts here so we can have a full conversation. Next, hopefully you guys can kind of see this. This is kind of an idea of what my desktop might look like. So here in the middle, we have our sheet of paper, our 11 by 17 sheet of paper, which is normally the size that we work on for our comic pages. And then we have some drafting tools here. We have a T-square, we have triangles that are very helpful. And then we have this thing called the Ellipse Template. Now that not only helps you to make word bubbles, but it also helps you to make nice clean circles for those tires or a shield or a planet or a moon or things like that. Those things become very helpful. And what I love about these tools is they always help you to make straight lines. You can move them up and down your page, and you can never be blamed for not having a straight line because everything is clear. Okay. Everything is right there for you. All right. Now, what we do here, once we have our page, is that we try to lay out everything that we had in that thumbnail on a bigger scale. Right. Now, this isn't just necessarily from the script. This is just something that we're just making up for conversation. Okay. Now, I'm going to have to move a little quicker so we can kind of get through all this. Okay. Now, this is just kind of like a pencil layout. You kind of see a person up there at the top. If I can move up a little bit, it's moving a little slow. You see Kid Jackal down there, maybe protecting a woman laying on the ground. And then we can move to having more fleshed out pencils. Okay, obviously now we're in the bank. We see the gentleman with the gun. We see a little bit more of what Kid Jackal may actually look like and the woman in despair. Now what we do after that is we move into creating these inks. Let me do it this way. All right. And inks are just jet black lines that helps us to delineate exactly what's happening and what's not happening on the page. Clear blacks and clear whites. Now, this is just a basic idea of how this could happen. And unfortunately, I thought we would have time for a little bit of a tutorial, but we definitely don't. So I'm just going to kind of move through some of these pages here to kind of show you how this thing would work. Next, after the inks, we kind of move into some basic coloring. And I like to use my stylus and pen tool just to kind of get into those little small pockets and areas just to make sure the colors are nice and crisp and fresh. And this is kind of an idea of what could happen once you fully flesh out those colored areas, okay? And what we do with this is we take all those skills of penciling, inking, and coloring and finish the whole page. We flesh the whole page out, right? Now let's pretend that this page is done, okay? What we do next is we jump into the area of creating the text for everything, right? Now, when we put the text on, you don't have to type everything out. You don't have to use a computer, but if you do, it's totally fine. You can type things out. You can make a simple bubble with a little tail at the end, and you can kind of put those together. People have been doing it by paper for years, but this is just one way that we're able to do it on our computer, okay? The next thing we might want to do is do some effects. Yeah, we can do those big sound effects words, those splash words, right? Blam and flip and boom, all those kind of things. And if this book is in color, you can definitely color that in. What we also might want to do, since we have the graphic availability of Photoshop and the different types of programs that we can use, Clip Art Studio and Procreate and things like that, we might want to add a little more flair to it that we may not have thought about early on. Okay. Now let's just pretend that this page is done. Okay. And we've reached the area or the time in our work that we're saying, okay, we're done with our comic. This is it. This is what we like. Kid Jackal is ready for the market, ready for the shelf. What do we do next, right? And to begin that kind of conversation of what do we do or how do we go about really publishing our comic books, I think we need to take a step back and begin to talk about really how we really want to start the creation of our work and then where we want to end up. And what I mean by that is when you think about traditional comic books, it's a few basic extremes that in which comic books are created. Okay, there's just a few basic extremes in which comic books are created. And let me see if I can kind of put this together here. Yeah, I can just kind of do it this way, right? So at the very top tier, you see there's paper to paper. And what that's talking about is you're starting with paper and you're ending with a paper product. That means you're starting with your Bristol board, your 11 by 17 sheet paper, and you're ending up with a printed copy, right? And then at the very bottom, you see digital to digital. And what that simply means is that you're starting on a program that you have online or you have on your computer, and you're doing everything digitally. You're coloring, you're lettering, you're typing everything out. And at the end, you're also selling everything digitally. Now, in this world, this day and age that we live in, there's various things that can happen in between from paper to paper and digital to digital. You can start at paper and end up with a digital comic. You can start with digital artwork and then print it out physically, okay? All those have different variations of price points and different responsibilities that are attached to those in different business models. And I think it's very important to kind of understand where you sit or where you fit on that kind of guide or that kind of range to understand what your business model is going to be, where you're going to go, how much money you can truly make, and what your longevity is going to be in this industry. Now, let me see if I can close this out really quick and kind of in the last few minutes here, kind of get to some other things here. Let me see. Okay, so hopefully you guys can kind of see this here. I can move some stuff over. So when we're talking about production versus publication, we definitely have to take in consideration how much this stuff is costing. All right. So if you're an artist or a writer or a colorer or a letterer, you can see some of the price points right here. And these prices are actually coming from is comicbeat.com. It's a web source online, a resource, and a news website that tells you latest about the comic book industry. And this price point gauge is based on a 22-page comic book. We know comic books are usually like 32 pages, but let's just say 22 pages with other ads and things like that. All right, writers $25 a page. Artwork can be easily $100 a page or more. Ha ha ha. Coloring $35 a page. Lettering $10, and the golden cover can be $200. These are just some basic figures for us to think about, right? Let me see here. Now, what about publishing? Let's look at that. Let's see if we can kind of look at those numbers as well. Okay, this is what we mean by production versus publishing and what those costs may be. If you're looking at printing big things, printing like big numbers, 5,000 run, those kind of things, you may be able to get down to a 74 cents price per book or 40 cents price per book, right? But obviously you're putting out more money on the front end. You're putting out a few $1,000s to do that. Can your business sustain that? Can your family sustain that? Do you think you'll be able to sell those in a quick, short burst over the summer or within a year? Or are you going to need a couple of years to do that? So, right, these are questions you have to ask yourself. Let's move down to the next one. SM stands for small and medium printing, right? These are smaller runs. These are printers that you might know that might be local or might be, in the tri-state area that are willing to work with you. They may not necessarily do the $5,000 print run. They may do 100 run, or books, or even lower, 50. They might do 50 or 25. And those obviously a little bit more higher. Those are like $3 or $4 a book. And you may be able to manage that. That may be in your price range for what your business model is. That may be great for you. That's something to think about, right? Let's talk about other types of publishing, right? It doesn't have to be physical. It could be digital. We just talked about things being online, right? If someone is digitally hosting your book, right, you may be looking at, I think that number is wrong. Yeah, that number is wrong. We gotta get rid of that. But you may be looking at how much it costs to be on that person's webpage, whoever it is, whether it's a comic book printing media house, or if it's a web page that prints comics digitally, or just like a Webtoon. There's definitely a price point that is associated with that. Now, if we move down to the idea of you being the digital website that houses your own book, right? You may be paying something like $18 per month to host your website, right? Which might wind up giving you, you having to pay $150 to $200 per year to host your website. Is that a business model that you can afford? On top of the creation and production of the book, on top of those numbers from the previous page, whether you paid that to somebody or that is something that you paid to yourself in terms of time, these numbers add up, right? There's also a consignment relationship that you can have with a local comic shop or a comic shop that's interested in your type of fare. And with consignment, you're normally looking at a 60%, 40% split. So 40% of the profits would go to you and 60% profits would stay with the consignment shop. Okay. Now I know that was a big mouthful. That was a lot to kind of digest, but I just kind of wanted to go over some basics, some ideas that we can now discuss and have a good, healthy, wholesome conversation about, and we can kind of share some best practices and some ideas about what are some of the best ways that we found in creating comics. And hopefully what this workshop and this talk has been able to do is been able to inspire and demystify for some the process of creating comics. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so maybe I can see some faces and hear some voices, and then we can talk a little bit about what it means to create your own comics and what you guys are thinking are some of the stumbling blocks or some of the things that in this conversation that you didn't know that you learned that you'd like to discuss more about. But let's open up the floor for conversation. If anybody has a question, maybe you want to put it in the chat, or maybe I'm not sure if Kirsten can see if anybody has a hand up or a question, because we have about 10 minutes left in our talk. I wanted to make sure that we had time to do that.
I
All
don't.
right. Everybody knows everything. That's awesome. They can teach me something.
So Kenzie, you do have a question, and the question is, can you go into more details about Webtoons, please?
Yeah, slightly, only because I haven't in particular done Webtoons myself. I've looked into it. And the only thing that I could really say about Webtoons, I guess there's two different things here. There's Webtoons, the actual website, the company called Webtoons, and they have a process in which you can pitch to them your story ideas, and they will let you know if you are eligible to be a part of their website. And from what I understand, there are ways that you can earn money from that site, but I'm not sure exactly what all those details are. But if we're talking about just Webtoons, comics online, then I think there's definitely ways that you can do that yourself. Again, if you have a platform. Now, ways that you can do that for free, obviously, are if you have your own website, if you have Instagram or Facebook, you can just go bananas right then and there. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for anybody's approval. You can just go and start. And I think a little bit of the success that we may see from a lot of people in our community is from people making comics on social media, people posting every week, people making images some every day, and they're creating that following with that. And from creating that following, they're beginning to have a target market or a focus group that is very much interested in seeing more of their work. Now they're addicted. They gotta have it. You have it. You have us waiting for this thing every day or once a week. Now we're addicted to this story and we gotta have it. Now we're willing to pay for it. How much is it? That's when you say, aha, this is how much it is. And then you begin to build your business from there. But Webtoons is definitely good. It's definitely viable. I think it's very smart. I am a physical media kind of person, so I like the Webtoon side, but I also like the physicality of having things. When you don't pay your light bill, then you're out of comics. Internet's out.
So thank you. Another question that you have in the Q&A is, what apps are you using to create your comic books, and what do you use each of them for?
Sure. Primarily, okay. Well, yeah, I pretty much am a PC person. That being said, I like the Adobe suite. I have a subscription, and I use Photoshop and Illustrator primarily. I know some people like to use other programs like, what is that called? The Design Studio? I forget what that one is called. But yeah, there's other programs that Adobe affords and offers you that you could definitely make publications, books and things like that. It's just that Illustrator and Photoshop, excuse me, are the best ones that allow you to draw, allow you to add text and things like that. There's other, so I use Photoshop mainly for the fine-tuned drawing. Like I can go there with my stylus and act like it's a pencil, and I can actually sketch and draw feet and draw buildings and monsters and cars and things like that. I can do that in Photoshop. What I do in Illustrator mainly is for text, laying down the text and the lettering, creating the logo possibly for the character, like if they have an emblem, or the logo marquee for the comic book cover. I can do that clean and clearly, more so in Illustrator than in Photoshop. So that's pretty much what I use those for. Photoshop is for like the more organic type of art, and then Illustrator is for the more clean cut vector type art that can be used for marquees, titles, text, things like that.
Thank you. I have a follow-up to that question. Is there an app that is better for young people to learn with?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That I am not fully sure, but I would say that if you use things like what are those things like Mac Paint and things like that, you can do some nice drawings in those programs. You know, Procreate is not necessarily a program for a child, but you can create in Procreate. I know people like what's that, Clip Studio Pro or Clip Studio EX, things like that. Those programs I think work well. And I think at the end of the day, any program that allows you to draw clearly and you can test, everybody's not the same. Everybody's taste is not the same. You can test it out and see if you can actually draw clearly, freely, and comfortably in that program, then that's the one for you. The only question after that is how you're going to add text. And if you go back to my model of where you sit on the production versus publishing grid, are you going to stay digital and move to print? Or are you going to be a digital artist with a digital end product? Those are the kinds of questions that you have to ask yourself, and they can begin to detail or dictate what type of tools you're going to need or should use.
Thank you. I have another question from my audience. Which type of publishing do you suggest for artists who are starting out? Also, what types of publishing do you use?
Yeah, so for those starting out, it depends on what age you are too. I guess if I'm talking to young people, my children create their own comics. I give them 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. I fold them in half, staple them, and they go to town. They've made like at least 4 or 5 each, fully colored, fleshed out, and they're comics. They're one-offs. They're rare. It costs a lot of money, but they're comics. You could Xerox them and go to Staples and get them copied and things like that. But for the most part, one-offs aren't bad. Create one-offs and see what happens. Who wants it? Who likes it? If you want to sell it, fine. If you heard Brother Kenji earlier, he said, he's not really interested in the financial aspect of it. He wants to tell a story. So who are you? What do you want to do? Do you want to tell us? Do you just want to tell stories, or do you want to actually make a profit from this? Do you want a little bit of both? But what I typically use for publishing is I am a digital artist and I like my end product to be print in hand. So I go from digital to paper.
Practice.
Don, your conversation is live. So if Kenji can mute so that Kenzie could finish, that would be great.
Or let me in the joke. All right. Well, anything else? Anything else, my friends? If there's nothing else, I want to thank Towson University for having me this afternoon, for allowing Ekbach into your home and allowing us to speak to your audience. So now this is our audience, our family, about storytelling. Storytelling is so important. It's so important. Storytelling allows us to transmit ideas and information from one person to another person. It allows us to make that transmission not only to our peers, but also to our younger people, to our children. And eventually, once we have products that can withstand the test of time, they're in our hands, they could be on the shelf, they could be archived online, these stories could be transmitted to our children's children. And that's the win. For us to tell our stories and let those stories last forever. I don't know if that was a good sign off.
Okay, Brother Kinsey, I had actually another question for you. I don't know. I'm hearing myself.
No, I hear you. It's cool. It's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we have another minute, I guess.
do you all have a tool that you can provide or suggest that can guide people through the process of making their own comics, or just thinking through stories and things like that?
Oh wow, man. Let me tell you, if you Google how to make comics, there's like 800,000 entries online, whether it's a video or whether it's a book or a magazine or article. It's everywhere. It is everywhere. Now, if you're talking about, specifically people that are interested in telling stories that have a cultural bent or a cultural foundation, then, I would definitely say, look at people like myself. I think I have one of the few books that talks about how to create African superheroes, but then also look at and research the books that you like, that are already out there. Just like anything else, if you want to get good at a certain sport, you watch the pros. You have coaches and things like that, but you watch the pros. Now, is there like a program or algorithm that children or people can use to kind of allow them to go through the process? No, not that I know of. I think some people have tried, but not that I know of. I think the best thing are listening to the people that you spoke to today, that you learned about today, talk to them about their process, have them share their best knowledge and their best practices, and then ask those pertinent questions. I'm having trouble with page 5. Can you take a look at this? What do you think? Or this is my story synopsis. How does it sound to you? Oh, I drew this building. Do you think it's in perspective or do you not? Sometimes we forget as African people, our technology is us more so than these boxes. The technology is us. So you don't have to look for a book. You can call your brother or your sister. That I would say, if that helps.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much for this session. We are going to take another short break, and then we'll come back for our final panel discussion at 2:45. We will begin, and that will run for about an hour. And that discussion will be on the state of the Black superhero. So we're doing well. And this has been a fascinating conversation. And so if we could start the slideshow while we get everyone prepared for the final panel, can we do